Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I'm your host, Heather Sumlin, and today I have Sloane Lewis. Sloane was Miss Kansas in 2012. She is the current director of Miss New York. She is also an attorney, extremely successful human, and we talk about not only the things that she's done that have been successful, that we also talk about some of the things that she's struggled with. So enjoy. Ready?
Okay.
Hi, Sloane. I'm so thankful to have you on the show today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I would love for you to share a little bit about you and anything that you want everybody to know.
Well, I'm Sloane Lewis. I am a former Miss America state title holder. I was Miss Kansas in 2012. And after that experience, decided to stay involved with the organization, and did a little bit on the side, but mostly focused on my dream of becoming an attorney. I had always wanted to go to law school. I took a short sidetrack and was a high school teacher for a couple years with the Teach for America program in New York City. So made the jump from Kansas to New York and have been in New York for 12 years now. So coming up, or maybe 11, can't remember what, 2014, so 11 years, and have been a criminal defense attorney for 5 years.
Oh, what is that like being a criminal defense attorney?
I love it. I'm lucky because I do a little bit of everything. My main focus is white collar criminal defense, but I do have some regular criminal defense work. I also have a little bit of plaintiff's work. But generally, most of my cases are on the defense side. I love it. It's exciting. It gives me an opportunity to really advocate for somebody else, which has always been since I was young. That's what I've always wanted to do. And in representing people who are, and a lot of times being falsely accused of things, you really do find it's very rewarding at the end, whatever the outcome was, because you help people say things and put into words things that they weren't able to do themselves. And from a legal perspective, it's really, really important for people to have that.
So when you were Miss Kansas, is that what you thought your future was going to be? I'm going to be a criminal defense attorney in New York one day?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that was my goal. It's funny because people always say like Sloane is the person that if she said she was going to do something, she definitely followed through. And I knew I always wanted to be a legal advocate. I had worked as a representative with children who were at risk, children who were in foster care and who had been affected by the juvenile justice system. And I was 19 years old when I started working with those children. So I knew that's kind of the direction I was headed. And I wasn't sure if I saw myself as an advocate as a teacher or a mentor or more of a legal advocate. But I had a feeling. My dad growing up used to tell me that that I should be an attorney, and I was always like, no, what is he talking about? And kind of in a role of defiance, I guess, I started studying neurobiology at the University of Kansas, but very quickly realized that my strength was in oral advocacy, and so quickly changed my major to pre-law and have been focused on that ever since.
So I met you when you were Miss Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
heading to Miss America, and but you've stayed involved. So now you're a director
Yeah.
in New York
Yep.
for the entire
Yep.
state organization. How did that
Yeah.
happen?
So kind of very unexpectedly, when I moved to New York, the woman who won Miss America the year I competed was Mallory Hagan, who was Miss New York. And so when I moved to New York, she was the first person I contacted, and I didn't know anybody here. I had absolutely no friends, nothing. And of course, reached out to her. She got me, looped in with her friends. And so, of course, kind of got put back into the pageant circle, which was really fun for me because, you feel like when you're out of the world for a while, you feel like, okay, this thing that was a part of my life for so long is no longer here. And how do I, get back involved? These people don't even know who I am. And so Mallory was really great. She looped me in with her friends and ended up after, maybe 3 or 4 years working again, found myself working with Nia Franklin, who won Miss America in 2019, who was Miss New York. And it was actually the year Nia was Miss America that I got a call from her saying that they were looking for a new director in New York, and this was 2019. And I was in my last year of law school, and I said, and I was also pregnant. So I was pregnant with my second child in my last year of law school, and they asked if I could be the director of Miss New York, and I was like, well, I don't know that I can, but I'll apply. I'll
Yeah.
fill out the paperwork, which ended up being like a 67-page business plan. And one of my really great friends, Mac Hopper, who
Mhm.
now works for Miss America, but at the time was just, here in New York, wanted to help me get involved. And so he and I put together this 67-page presentation and eventually got the franchise. And that was 6 years ago. So here we are now, and I've been doing it since March 2019. We had our first competition in May 2019, so 2 months to put together a state competition with a class of only 11 because there all the
Right.
locals had disappeared. We didn't have any open title holders, so essentially threw together in less than 2 months a state competition. We ended up having 23 candidates that year at state, which was pretty incredible for the short time that we had. And it was great. And I feel like every year's been just as crazy. So, but we're learning, we're growing. We've got a great team behind us. I don't do it without so many
Mhm.
people. I mean, there are so many people that keep it running and make sure that I'm doing what I need to do, and we all really work really great together.
So, what was a defining moment in your life if you had to pick just one?
I think outside of outside of pageantry, which was obviously an incredible experience. On a personal note, I moved from a very small town in Kansas of 500 people. I was the only person of color. And I had kind of decided who I was at a very young age. And for better or for worse, I was kind of letting the circumstances that I was in determine where I was going to go to a certain extent, or who I was. I think I had low self-confidence, had very low self-esteem. Um, but one thing I was really good at was school, and I knew that that was going to be my escape. And so when I went to my first year at the University of Kansas, um, I thought, well, I'm not good at very many things, but I know my academics will not be the hard part for me. And I get to KU, I'm in calculus or something. It was probably calculus. And I remember I got a C or a C minus on an exam, and it shook me. And it was kind of a pattern where I was like, felt like I was doing everything I needed to be doing, but I wasn't succeeding. And I realized that there was a lot more to who I was than my academics, and I actually needed to figure out what that was. Um, so I got really, upset that first semester. I was getting grades that I hadn't, gotten before in high school. I went in with this, I can do school. School is my strength. And, I did okay. I did fine that first semester. Like looking back, there was no need to like completely
Right.
panic. But I got to a point where it was like if I couldn't define myself through my schoolwork, who was I? And I had to really take a step back and say, who am I, and why am I placing so much value on this one aspect of who I am? And it took a lot of soul searching. It took a lot of you know, getting involved and engaged on campus, and finding friends that were supportive. And honestly, what I realized was I I was struggling because I was trying so hard to fit myself into a path that other people had kind of determined for me.
Mm.
And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be, a science major. I didn't want to be a math major. Um, and I wasn't enjoying it. And it was okay to let go of that picture that other people had of me and find out who I was. And so really my first year, um, the failure in my academics, and I say failure because to me it was, even though, I still made the honor roll and all of those great things. It later on, I realized that I was trying to become somebody that other people wanted me to be and not who I was. And it shifted everything about me. Once I realized, I wanted to focus on law. I wanted to focus on advocating for other people. I wanted to have more oral advocacy opportunities. I wanted to be social and I wanted to get involved. Not only did my grades improve, but my sense of self improved, which in turn just made me so much of a more rounded person. I was happier. I believe my academics were improving simply because my mental health was in a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes failures, whatever they are to you, whether it's academics or you have a job, I had a very similar experience happen 10 years later when I got my first legal job. And um, sometimes failures are an opportunity for you to realize who you are, and they can almost redirect your path. And so I know that's a long-winded answer, but
Mm.
um, I've had moments like that where I am defined not because of where I came from, but because of a moment that I've chosen to redefine myself.
Mm.
And I think people forget that you can do that throughout your life. Even, in your late 30s, you might be redefining yourself, and that's okay.
So when you look at you mentioned failure can be really beneficial to discovering who
Mhm.
you are, who you want to be, or where you really want to go. So how would you define winning?
Oh my gosh, I think I mean, winning can be so many things, and it can be something so little. I think I win every day sometimes when I just wake up and I'm, I'm here and I get my kids out to school, out of the house and on the school bus in time. I have little wins all the time. I think whatever that's a I think it's a very difficult question to define one thing that's a win, but for me it's the little moments in life where I feel like I set a goal and I achieved it. But those are not always big goals, and actually more times than not, I'm not setting big goals for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to set myself up for failure. Um, I very infrequently make these big, wide sweeping goals for myself, especially at the age I am now. I think for me, like I said, truly getting up on time, getting my kids out the door is a success, and it does help me have a more successful rest of the day.
I think it's
As
important.
boring as that sounds.
I don't think it's boring at all. And I think if people would just celebrate the little bitty wins of each and every day, even those younger people who have their future ahead of them and they're setting these
Mhm.
astronomically huge goals. But if you honestly celebrate those little wins, isn't life better? Don't
Oh,
you feel
absolutely.
better?
Yeah, totally. It's so much better. I think people forget about how important those small wins are in the day. And if you're only waiting for the biggest wins, you're going to be sorely disappointed most of your days. Um, and that's because your perspective changes. You're looking at the forest rather than the trees, and life is trees. Most of life is trees. So I think that's important to remember.
So tell me a little bit about you are a director now in the Miss
Mhm.
America opportunity and state director. What do you wish that people understood about the Miss America opportunity that they might not understand?
It is there are so many things I want people to know about the program, but what I have found more recently is people forget about the fact that the woman representing the state or a local program is a career woman. And this is really true for New York, and I know it's true for a lot of states. But most of the time, these women are full-time either students or career women. Miss New
Mm-hmm.
York right now is working full-time. And that's very rare. And the reason that's so important is because they're choosing and they're often a part of this program in addition to so many other incredible things about themselves. And I think that gets lost when you try to communicate that to the public because they're thinking, well, this is just a beauty queen who, she's, up on
Mm-hmm.
stage wearing these gowns, blah, blah. That's all she is. But it's really just one aspect of who she is. And she's representing an organization that's important to her. And when you take Miss America out of who she is, she's still an incredible person. And the fact that she's choosing to still be a part of this organization and wants to be a part says a whole lot about the organization. And so I think people just need to have a full understanding of what these women bring to the organization and why they're still choosing to be a part of it.
I think there's a misconception that they don't do anything but smile and wave.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's 100% wrong because I have
Absolutely.
yet to meet a title holder in pretty much any system, but especially the Miss America opportunity, that they even enjoy smiling and waving. Like they want to be actively involved in the community. Like the parade is the least interesting event that they're going to do. They like to be hands on, speaking at events, making an active difference,
Yeah,
fighting for
absolutely.
changes, in our society. It's just incredibly impressive to see. So how do you think that the organization has impacted you since you've been Miss Kansas? Like how have you grown and changed because of your involvement, whether it's as a local and state title holder or as a director?
So many ways. I mean, it definitely set me on my career path. It furthered the path that I was already on for sure. It made me more confident. As I said, I had really low self-confidence. Even when I, competed in pageants I was 14, 15 years old competing, and I kind of forced myself to do it. And I never did the Miss America system. I always did other smaller, systems, but um, Miss America forced me out of my shell in a lot of ways. I was very self-conscious. I was, somewhat shy. I had terrible stage fright, as I know you worked
Mm-hmm.
on with me a lot. I played the piano and couldn't play in front of people. Terrible stage fright. And the organization has a way of what is that called? Like not shock therapy, but that's what comes to mind when you exposure therapy. It's like, oh, you don't like speaking in public, or you're kind of afraid of playing the piano in front of all these people. Oh, you're gonna do it every day for the next 300 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what happened. You get to a point where you have done something so many times that you are no longer afraid. You're not afraid to speak in front of high school students. You're not afraid to speak in front of preschoolers. You're not afraid to go to a CEO and ask for, X thousands of dollars in support of, this organization. Um, the fear of public speaking is gone. And that really is something that really shaped me and who I was. I could not have become a litigator without the Miss America experience. In law school, I was a part of a program called Moot Court, which is an organization that most law schools have.
Mm-hmm.
And you are competing against other students in oral arguments. So you go up there, there's a panel of judges, you're arguing a legal issue, and the judges will throw questions at you back and forth. And, will tell me about this holding in this case, and what did this case say about this? And I remember the first time I competed, people said, "Doesn't that scare you to have a judge throwing questions at you back and forth?" And I just kind of laughed and I thought, I've been doing this for years. This is nothing. But it did serve me well. I ended up being a competitor on a moot court team at our school. I was a swing position, which meant that there's a team of three people, and one person argues one side, another person argues one side, but then there's one person that can argue both sides, and I was that person. And so that was a really cool position to have, and then ended up being editor in chief of the entire program my last year of law school. And I owe all of that to the Miss America organization, just being able to speak and being confident when I did so.
So how old were you when you competed in Miss America
I
locals?
was 21 and 22. I turned 22 in the middle of my year. Actually, the day we got to Miss America was my 22nd birthday.
So did you win on your first or second try?
My first try.
Ooh, girl. That's
Yeah, it
amazing.
was it was crazy.
Did you expect it at all? Is it something that
Uh,
you
no, absolutely not. I competed for the scholarship money. I was kind of in a financial pickle, I will say, just to, you know, without going into a lot of details, but financially was not going to be able to continue to go to school. And someone had approached me and said, you really should consider competing in Miss America organization. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this again. I hadn't competed since I was like 14 or 15 years old. I was 21. And I won my local on my first try and won Miss Kansas on my first try. And nobody thought I was going to win. I didn't think I was going to win. I was shocked, to be honest. But as they say, if it's your year, it's your year. So it was my year.
So, what do you think you had that the judges saw in you that you didn't, maybe even at the time, really see in yourself?
It's funny, there are a few judges that I actually have still kept in touch with over the years, and I've seen them at different points in my life. And what they say is, you didn't even know how great you were. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you walked into the interview, and it was funny because at the time, I think we were still doing like preliminary where you could give away multiple preliminary awards. Now you can only give away like I think three. I
Mm-hmm.
should probably know this, but I think it's three. And at the time, I think Miss Kansas was giving away like maybe all of them still, and I got all of the preliminary awards. And so, but even when I got that, I thought, I was just like, I don't know. I had won
Yeah.
preliminary awards before at other pageants, but it didn't hit me until honestly, till after I won. And I think I was just so naive. I think going back to that lack of self-confidence, lack of self-assurance, not really sure who I was in the world, where I fit in, what strengths I had. I am so thankful, and this sounds, I think, kind of naive and maybe you know, looking back, I think people probably were like upset because I didn't even have the ability to advocate or like to convince people that I should win, right? It was
Mm.
I did my best. I went in there. I said why I thought I should win, what kind of job I thought I should do. But I had no idea that other people, I guess I thought that what I had to say was not as great as what other people would have to say.
Right.
And there's a lot of like reasons for that. I have grown up now, recognizing things that happened in my childhood and in the small town that I grew up in that had made me believe that I wasn't as
Mm.
good as other people or that I would never be successful in the way that other people were because I was different, because I looked different from them. I came from a mixed family. Like I said, I was at the time the only African American in my town, and I think I didn't know. I only saw that as a weakness, I guess,
Mm.
amongst so many other things that I had been bullied for in my life, and so I think I had let all of that define me in a way inside. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't in the way that I was portraying myself externally, but internally, it certainly affected how I thought about myself. So there was no way I thought I was going to win. I thought I might do good. I was like, top five. I'll take top five, 10, whatever. But to walk away with the crown and then have the realization that I was going to Miss America was absolutely shocking to me. But it was the greatest experience I ever had.
I remember it's been a minute because I was like 2012. That's been a second. But I
Hmm.
remember some of our sessions because I remember you were pretty terrified at the thought of, am I play this piano in front of all these people and it's going to be on TV? And and I
Hmm.
remember feeling like you are absolutely stunning, super qualified. You could play the piano, like you could play. And so it's having that ability to invest into people who maybe they don't see what they have to offer yet. The judging panel saw in you something that you probably hadn't really seen yet, but you obviously were able to exude it anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
it's pretty
It's really
remarkable.
interesting because there are moments even today, in my career where I think, well, why did they hire me? Or am I really, am I as
Mm-hmm.
good as these people that went to Harvard Law School? And um, I'm sitting in the room with people. The law firm I work at now is it's a very competitive law firm. It's a top law firm that, is very specialized in white collar criminal defense. And it's incredible that I even work there. And, but every day I'm questioning, like, why did they hire me? Like, why
Mm-hmm.
am I here? And I think they're going to figure this out soon that I actually don't have any idea what
Imposter
I'm doing.
syndrome. Yeah.
And I know that's not true because I'm at a point now where I can draft the motions I need to draft. I know how to, do all of the logistics of being a litigator. But there are definitely moments where I go back to that 10-year-old girl and I shrink down into my shell and I think, oh my God, I'm not good enough. And I think a lot of people experience that. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Um, but I will say what Miss America and Miss Kansas did for me was show me that I can do it
Mm-hmm.
no matter what I think and no matter what people had told me. I could do it. And so I still apply that same fear, that the same tactic I apply to the fear that I have today is if I was successful at the age of 21 at something I had never done before, I
Mhm.
can certainly do this, something that I have been doing for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. Um, I can do that. I know what I'm doing. And so, um, you know, I think we all have those moments where we feel insecure, and um, I'm just I'm just thankful for the experience I had because I think it taught me a lot.
Well, I think it's also helpful for other people to see, wow, so she was Miss Kansas. She's the director of Miss New York. She is a professional attorney who is, really successful as a human in general. And yet she still has imposter syndrome sometimes.
Yeah,
So like
totally.
if
Absolutely, I
she can
do.
have it, then why am I confused as to why I have it, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's very vulnerable to even be open about that too, because it's helpful to people to know that not everybody feels like they have it all together all the time. Sometimes we
Yeah.
pretend like we do because we got to enter the room and we've got to have the confidence show, but that doesn't mean that we actually feel the way that we portray in the
Yeah.
moment. And you just
Yeah.
show must go on. You keep moving.
Yeah, you have to keep moving and you have to remember like, just like those judges did in 2012, like my bosses saw something in me even if I don't see it right now. Um, and here we are. We're going to keep moving. So,
So if you could give a piece of advice that you've been given, if you could share a piece of advice you've been given that's made a significant impact on you, what would it be?
it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. That is a saying that I heard from a famous radio DJ who has since passed, Kid Craddock. I think he's from Texas,
Yeah, he
actually.
is. Yeah.
But he used to say that on his radio show, and I've been listening to his show since I was like probably second or third grade. Um, but that has always stuck with me because a lot of people, especially in this, in, in any industry, they're fighting to gain this notoriety, to have a title, to be important. They want to be meaningful. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to sacrifice relationships and friendships and your own values in order to achieve that level of importance, I think you will not end up being happy. And so I have always taken a back seat when I felt like I would have to sacrifice my values in order to, achieve some kind of great role or title. Because to me, nothing is ever worth it when you have to give up something that's important to you, and that includes being nice. I've worked for a lot of people who were important and great people, but they were not nice people, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't matter how impressive they were. If they weren't nice people, I didn't want to work for them.
Oh, I think that's so important. That's so smart. So if people want to follow you or if they want to find out more about the Miss New York opportunity, where do they go?
Yeah, they should go on Facebook or Instagram now. Instagram is definitely where we post the most, at Miss America NY. And then if you want to follow me, I always point people to my Sloane Cooks Instagram. It's at Sloane_Cooks. That's another little thing you'll learn about me is I love to cook and I hope to open a restaurant someday.
Ooh.
But that's where I post all of my food and recipes and all that fun
So
stuff.
that's the
So
passion that you have, kind of like that hidden passion. You should be on one of those like
absolutely.
cooking shows. I don't know.
Oh,
That
I
would be
would
a lot
love
of
that.
fun. Yeah. You'd be great. It'd be cool.
I would love
It'd
to.
be
I
fun.
would love to cook. I would love to have my own show. I'd love to go on Top Chef someday. Like if they
There
ever
you
did a
go.
Top Chef home cook version, like where you didn't have to
Ooh.
work in a restaurant, I would kill it. I think I would.
That would be so fun. Well, it's been great catching up with you, Sloane. Thank you so much for sharing.
You too. Thank you.
If you're not a Patreon member, I recommend that you join She Wins Solutions for Pageantry Patreon because I'm going to pick Sloane's brain. We're going to talk about what's it like to be a director from New York and maybe things that you see that work for girls who want to compete and can be successful. So follow along.